And the next speaker is Mrs. Ulrike Rivett. Mrs. Rivett is Associate Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering of the University of Cape Town. She leads iCOMMS. That's a team that focuses on developing mobile infrastructure to monitor the delivery of basic services to rural communities. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I tried to shorten the title of my presentation because it always looks better on a paper than what it looks on a slide. So basically our work has been on trying to see how we can use IT and ICTs to improve the monitoring of water quality in rural areas in developing countries. So I'm going to take you all away from gaming. I'm going to take you to the real world of a rural village and share a little bit of our experiences there. Basically, one of the things that was previously also mentioned, water quality is a key issue for the developing world. As you know, there's still a lot of people affected by drinking water that's unsafe, and one of our key jobs has been to improve potable water and the quality of drinking water in the developing world. And we also know and believe, when we are IT people, that better data, better information will in the end lead to better information making, and often the challenges of rural communities and the developing world is actually that we don't get the data and the information quick enough, so the decision makers always are a couple of steps behind knowing what's going on in the rural village, and that often makes it impossible to actually react to real challenges. And that's then how often the diseases like cholera and so on spread very quickly, because before you can react is already a long time when the problem gets detected. One of the key advantages being from South Africa is not only that the weather is better than it is in Amsterdam today, but another key benefit is that South Africa has been incredibly fortunate in being in a situation where we have tried very hard over the last couple of years to improve access to water. Partially that's due to the history of trying to level out the playing field between the rich and the poor. There is a lot of support from the international world to improve these aspects, and we have really tried to develop regulations, policies, and initiatives to deliver better water. And some of them are quite exciting, like, for example, the so-called blue and green drop initiatives. It's a principle where you say you give a city or you give a rural municipality a status of blue drop when their drinking water quality is very high. And you don't only look at the quality of the drinking water, but you look at asset management, you look at infrastructure development, and the whole thing was actually trying to be completely different and not penalizing people for performing badly, but rather having a really big party, which it seems South Africans are very good at, and giving greater prizes to the people that try and make an effort, even if they sometimes can't succeed all the way. And Green Drop Initiative was the same for water treatment plants, so trying to really give prizes to people who use and develop better models to manage their water and the water treatment. One of the challenges is we have developed these blue and green drop initiatives and started off monitoring the whole country since 2009, and every single year these reports get published so the whole country can see what the water is like. We even have SMS applications where you can type, "How is my water?" and you will be given feedback on what the water quality in your rural community is like. But the reality is also that, as you all know, more data, more information means that you have somehow more work, because you know more. And if you know more, you have to do something to actually address the issues. So one of the things that's becoming clearer and clearer is that the rural communities are lagging further behind, that we are seeing more and more that all of these systems actually benefit the cities, because the cities have the resources, the cities actually can do something with the information, whilst the rural communities, as a gentleman from a rural municipality once said to me, it's like taking part in a horse race where everybody runs with a fantastic horse and all you have is a donkey. So it becomes like that for rural communities. They constantly get reaffirmed in the fact that they're performing badly, and they often don't have sufficient knowledge to make decisions. So what we have tried is to see how we can deal with the decentralization of monitoring water, and to actually get away from a bureaucratic function. Often these audits and these systems of actually monitoring water result in you filling in lots of forms in order to say, this is what the water in my community is like, this is what the municipality is doing to address issues, And so what we're trying to do is we develop better and better monitoring systems. Often these IT systems are managed nationally, and the municipalities at local level need to enter data into the system. So their job is really just to enter data. And then national government knows how good the water quality is across the whole country, but that may make absolutely no difference to the people in the rural community, because all they've done is enter the data, but they didn't necessarily get a benefit from it. So one of the things that we were looking at as a team at the university was trying to reflect on the interaction between IT systems and the decentralization functions of governments to monitor, and how that actually impact. Because sometimes you can see it's a little bit like, planning a big event. If you have somebody, you trust the caterer, you won't check up on them. So that's what national government does with the big cities. They trust the big cities that they can deliver. So they don't actually check up on them. But with the rural villages, they're constantly on their back saying, what are you doing? Are you doing this right? How are you spending your money? Is there anybody corrupt? And so they don't actually ever see the power of the decentralized function, and we wanted to look at how can we actually now empower the rural communities to collect information that makes a difference to them. And so one of the things, as I said earlier, we know that government is committed to deliver services, we know that it has a legal responsibility, and we know that there's a lot of systems out there that we could use at local level. So we tried to see if we can develop an IT system that on the one side helps national government to monitor water quality in rural areas, but on the other side develop a system where people who collect information on the ground for national government can also use that information to make better decisions in their context. So we looked at system requirements, because that's always the important aspect of designing systems. And so we looked at what systems are out there, because that's the best way of getting something developed that actually works. And the obvious choice in African countries is the cell phone. The cell phone is the one system that's there that everybody has. So we focused on using that, and we used a method in which we included the municipalities and the villages and the communities to really help us to design a system that could help them collect information that would actually make a difference to them, rather than only making a difference to national government. Our work was then implemented in South Africa, Mozambique, Vietnam, and Cambodia, just to also get a little bit of the feeling of the developing world. I often say that there's a key challenge Africa has, and that's we all talk about Africa as if it's one country. Reality is Africa is many very different countries, and so is the developing world. So the reason for us going into Asia and other African countries was really to try and see how much difference and how much similar situations are there. So we developed a system which is called the Water Quality Report. It's a very simple cell phone application that is given to borehole operators in rural communities. And the point is the rural community has somebody who looks after the borehole or after the key water supply, and they provide feedback on the water quality of that particular source. Sometimes there's nothing more than telling us the borehole pump is working, because you know that if the pump is working, people fetch water from the borehole, and the borehole water is safe. Whilst if the borehole pump is not working, they all go to the river, and the reality is that majority of them will get diarrhea. So sometimes the information that we wanted them to collect is incredibly simple, because all we want to know is the pump working. In this case, sometimes we had far more detailed information, because the government might want to know a whole lot about the source. Is it a house connection? Is it a tap? So it was trying to set up a system where we could respond to different local contexts. So in different villages, we implemented different systems. They were all based on the same principles, but basically, depending where you were located, you only collected a certain set of information. Sometimes the question was, in the more advanced villages, is your water treated? Do you have chlorination? And how does that work? And then what we realized is all that information is sent to a central server, and then it gets sent to the manager, so to the government official in charge of that area. And the point of that is that in the end, water quality and water delivery is still a function of the government. So we wanted to empower the managers, but also not give an excuse to the managers that they can actually react to good information. Because often it's quite a nice excuse to say, but I didn't know. Now you actually do know, and we know that you know, so you actually have to do something. So what we then realized is that managers in rural villages are often like jacks of all trade. They do a lot of different things. So they often didn't react to the reports we sent them when we sent them by email, and also they're hardly in their office. So we decided to develop something which would support the managers on the run, so that when they were sitting in a boring meeting, they could actually check what's happening up in their field sites. And we then also looked at how did they use that technology over the time. For the people at national government, because they are 2,000 kilometers away, they wanted to see what's happening. We developed a little website so that they could click at their various areas and see what the water quality is like. And since water quality is obviously public knowledge, the public could log on to that as well and see. So you have simple reports where it would give you downloads, and you could also, for the managers, they could also, for example, download the performance of the different operators. Just to look at the Android application, was a very simple touchscreen application, and that itself came with great learnings. I don't know if you ever measured the size of a finger of a manager in a rural village. They have serious hands. So that was quite interesting in itself. Samsung tablets are a better, or any tablet is a better option. So we used these kind of applications where you would basically just click on your municipality, you would see the different areas that you are responsible for. You could get a breakdown for every day. You could then get a clear detailed using the standards of South Africa, which is the normal international standards on water quality. And then you would basically be told where things were working right and wrong. And since nothing works without Google, we had the Google app, even if all managers know where their sites usually are. So the information flow is very simple. You have operators that are based in rural villages. They collect the information that gets sent to the server, and then the managers get, as soon as any of the if any of the data are above a threshold, then the manager will immediately be informed, and otherwise the manager gets also the average feedback. I thought I need to show you some decent pictures of South Africa. So we had some really nice implementations in very rural villages. Hani, Alfred district, and Amathole district, and Hantam. What's common between all of these is in Hantam municipality you have 1 person per square kilometer density. So there is nobody. And that kind of shows you the issues. Whilst in Hani you have 800 villages, and the district is as big as Switzerland, and you have 12 guys that have to look after that whole section, and they all have a car to share. So every week somebody else has the car. So there is real challenges with regards to managing the size, but it is very beautiful. So one of the things we did was, there's a lot of IT projects, a lot of cell phone projects, there's a huge hype around it, and everybody says cell phones are the way to go. So what we really wanted to look at, how good is it really? Because unfortunately, there's a tendency to have these pilot projects that start everywhere, and then you have this littering. Everybody tells you how great their project was, and then it never goes to scale. And actually the poor municipalities sit there and think, should we invest our money into some ICT, and we don't really know if it's going to work. So what we try to do is really analyze where the municipal benefits were, where, for example, the project implementation, so the way we implemented the project resulted in good, bad, or mediocre results, and also to look at the perceived usefulness, the ease of use, the problems, the fact that it really is perceived as a great thing to work with universities. So people take your technology because they think you're smart, so you will solve somehow some problem. Reality is you don't replace with a cell phone a car that's non-existent. So, these kind of things were really useful to reflect on, and I think the big benefit of being from a university is that you can actually honestly say it didn't work, whilst when you're from a company that becomes a little bit more challenging. So we spent some time looking at over 4 years. The project was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we basically looked at how well did it work, what difference did it really make. The one thing that we realized that in all the municipalities, as well in all the countries, from Mozambique to Cambodia, South Africa, Vietnam, everybody manages water quality completely different. Even if we know what water quality means and how we would say what water needs to be like so that it's safe to drink, how it gets managed, and who is the water supplier, and who checks that the quality is right, and who knows and who doesn't know, is completely different within each country, and even within each municipality, specifically in rural environments where you often have very stretched resources. The one thing that became for us incredibly interesting in South Africa was that the whole system, what created trust, and the trust was around the fact that the borehole operators could, for example, show their communities that they had complained to the manager that there was no chlorine, and that complaint was in writing and could be tracked. Because often what the issue was that shifting of blame, who actually told whom what had been done. So the complaint register, which was not what we had intended. When we designed the system, we had not intended to develop a complaint register. The complaint register became probably one of the most important aspects. So that borehole operators would say to us, but I told him on the 14th of September that we didn't have chlorine, and I haven't gotten the chlorine today. And the same for the managers, that now we're able to actually see who performed and who didn't perform, which of the borehole operators were doing a good job and who didn't. So it became also an HR management tool. Yet again, we hadn't envisaged that. And that was quite interesting. We identified who was accountable, but as I said, the one challenge is you have more information, you have more workload. And that is a real issue. We sometimes pretend that's not the case, but now you know the water is bad. So some of the municipalities realized that they didn't have enough capacity. The guys who were with it would then apply to get more funding to employ more people, but some rural municipalities just can't do that. So in a way, it didn't help. So yeah, just to say, sometimes with rural municipalities, it's a little bit of a mathematical situation. You have too many variables and only one equation, which doesn't work out. So you need to be very flexible. And we realized that the integration with national systems is important, but one needs to develop systems that actually make a difference at local level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rivett. Is there any question from the audience? And otherwise, I have a question myself. Is there a way that you could really test if this method or this system really improves also over a larger time frame with respect to traditional communication? Did you do a blind test?
Yeah, we did. I mean, what we had to do was we worked with governments to identify sites. So we only worked in municipalities where people. Sorry, we.
Okay, the question was if there is some kind of blind test performed to really compare the performance of this system with respect to traditional communication systems.
Yeah, the traditional systems that were existing were paper-based. So we didn't do any blind testing because there were no automated systems at all. So one of the things we did do is obviously do a before and after study. But the challenge was also we integrated within government setup. So we had to request from the governments to give us sites where people could actually deal with the additional burden of a research project to their daily work. So that was actually quite challenging because we implemented the system over 2 years. And a lot of the developing country governments are quite tired of researchers coming the whole time saying, let me show you this fantastic project that I have. I'm sure you have a problem that I can solve. So that was an issue. We couldn't do a whole trial like you would probably want to do for the simple reason that we really needed collaborations with the governments. So all we have are probably slightly one-sided results and over 2 years.
Nevertheless, very promising. Thank you again.